All right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Teardown. My name is Jeff Gluck. I'm along with Jordan Bianchi. We are motorsports writers for The Athletic, and we are back after the Easter break to do 28 in a row. I know Jordan's excited because he didn't even take an off week, but he is back. Yeah, what off week? Jordan, you are at Talladega Super Speedway. That is what we're going to talk about today. And certainly not the race that everybody anticipated, at least in terms of the carnage. I think it was pretty much exactly the race we anticipated up until the end. So what was your take on why no big one today? Everybody had a clean finish.
No. I want to hear you. I went first at Bristol. Your turn now to lead us off.
Well, first of all, I mean, I'm not in a position to complain about this whatsoever. Because
before, has it?
I can't complain about this race because I'm out. If this race ended the other way, which I only see these races ending one of two ways in the next gen era, right? You're either going to have a total big one, controversy, overtime. Let's go to the photo. Who's leading with this weird angle? Oh, looks like this car might be out in front. Oh, so wait. Oh, do you see when the light went on? Yeah, pretty much, right? And the whole field gets wadded up, and everybody's like, "Oh, these races, they fuel save all day, and then they crash at the end, and then you get some random person winning it, and that's it, right?" So that's the alternative to what we saw now. So am I going to sit here and go, "Oh, I can't believe that"? No, I'm going to say, well, hey, for once we had a clean green finish. Now, do I love that you couldn't pass? Do I love that you couldn't make a third line, that everybody was stuck? Of course not. That's not what we're looking for, but that's the options with this car. You're either going to have one way or this way. So I'm choosing to say, well, hey, everybody, there was a clean finish. It wasn't crazy. There was no controversy. There was no, NASCAR Insights just posted that the 62 lap green flag run to finish, which is all of stage 3, was the longest green flag run to end at a drafting track race without a last lap accident since 2004 July Daytona. There was no cautions at all after stage 1 in terms of incidents. There's only 2 incidents of this race were in stage 1, and those were on coming to a green flag pit cycle and on a restart, essentially. So that's it. It was a clean Talladega. I'm not going to get mad about it because every other race ends in a crash fest. So why would I complain about this? That's where I'm saying.
I think that's actually a reasonable look on this. And I'm kind of the same way. Like, you can nitpick this. Like, drivers were frustrated afterwards because they didn't feel like they could make moves and pass. And I understand that. And I'm trying to be the optimist here. And I look at this as this in a lot of ways kind of felt like an old school NASCAR super speedway race, like very strategy laden. I like that element. I like that the Toyotas had their strategy of basically, we're going to go hard at a certain point and we're going to kind of put this out there and we're going to make Ford and Chevy do their thing. And I liked how everything unfolded. It was an interesting game of kind of a chess match, if you will. I thought that there were teams that were really well positioned to do something today. The 11 of the Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell's, some other teams, and they put themselves in position, but they also took themselves out of position by miscues. And so you can blame the package and everything else, and that's fine. And there's truth in that, but there's also some acknowledgement of there still was people who put themselves in position. And you and I have had this conversation about this car and skill level and everything, and that was a popular topic this weekend. But we got a driver in Austin Cindric who is good in these races. Say what you will, but he is typically good in the next gen era in these races. And it's not a coincidence that he was up there again today. And so I look at that, and during the break, I ended up watching a bunch of old NASCAR races. I was watching a race. I watched the 1990.
You sure know how to have fun, Jordan, on your off time.
I know. I watched the 1990 Pepsi 400 at Daytona, and a lot of that was controlled by one driver. There wasn't a lot of passing. Now, a big crash wiped a lot of people out, but still. And I watched the 1994 one of the 1994 spring race at Talladega. And again, a driver there really pretty much controlled everything and led a huge number of laps. And so in a lot of ways, this felt like an old school race where it's like you really couldn't do anything by yourself. You were dependent on circumstances. It was a track position race. Now, is that what you want out of super speedway racing? That's the fundamental question that we always come down to, is what do you want your super speedway racing to be? And the thing of it is if you want it to be one thing, that's fine, but you're also going to have to accept there's going to be some negatives with that as well. And I don't know if you can have everything when it comes to this style of racing.
Yeah, look, I mean, the disappointing thing is the package with the car right before this, in the few years before the Gen 7 next gen car, was probably the best super speedway package they've ever had, right? Like, to me, I mean, it was incredibly thrilling. So when you go from that to this, that's disappointing. But it's just sort of the nature of where we have with this car. This car has created this fuel mileage racing. And I hear, Michael McDowell and other people have said, well, no matter what you do now, we're stuck with the fuel mileage racing because everybody's figured it out as a strategy. The other part of that is it's a strategy because you can't pass. That's why track position is so important. So as long as you have a package where you're going to be stuck and where you can't pull out a line and make moves, of course, fuel mileage and track position and all that stuff is going to be the most important thing, right? So the logical thing would be, okay, well, let's get a package that's racier, right? Let's get these guys where they can move around again, where we can see those guys slice and dice up through the field. Here's a problem. Okay, to do that, you're probably going to have to make these cars go faster, right? To get some separation, to get some bigger runs.
Need more horsepower.
Right now, they all drive perfectly. You hear the drivers talk in their post-race comments. My car drove perfectly, right?
Tires are a big thing too.
So here's the thing. If you make the cars go faster, what's going to happen? It increases the liftoff possibilities, the flips, which they haven't solved yet. They didn't come up with any new solutions after Daytona. They looked at some things, we heard, right? But there's no new aero stuff to keep these cars on the ground. And we've talked over and over again on this podcast, everybody has, about this flat bottom of the car. If it gets some air, it's going to send the cars up. So obviously the worst fear for anything in NASCAR has always been cars going into the stands, cars going through the fence, cars injuring fans, right? The drivers sign up to risk their lives. The fans don't come to have a car fly into their laps. And so NASCAR tries to keep the cars on the ground at a certain speed. So with this car, it seems like this is what we have, right? So I don't really know what the solution is, because if you take one, you're going to have a safety concern. This is why while it stinks, again, like I'm just saying, okay, I don't think there's nothing new here. I was screaming at Bristol because it felt like, hey, we've reached a point where this is the lowest. This has already been reality. We could have, everybody would have said exactly how this race played out for most of the day. They're going to start the race. They're going to be 3-4 wide for fuel saving as much as possible until the final pit stop. The one wrinkle was that Toyota decided to push the issue and try to pick up the pace. Did that actually cost them, though? Because when they pick up the pace, then they had to take more fuel maybe at the end, because I guess maybe everybody did, but they got beat on that green flag pit cycle. It didn't work out for them, their strategy. So I don't know. I think this is just sort of what it is at super speedway racing. Again, so I want to be very clear here. I'm not saying, wow, I love this. This was awesome. I just don't want to say this sucked, because the alternative is worse to me. The ending under chaos and a photo finish where you're looking at when did the caution come out? Oh, it's right there. I don't like that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a couple things is I think we kind of lose sight of how difficult it is to run 3-4 wide inches apart at the speeds they're running. Like, it's not easy to do. And so you're like, oh, they're running half throttle, and they're just kind of running in line. Okay. But that's still, like, to do that the way they do that and to have to be flawless is pretty impressive. And somebody said something to me at the tweet up today that really kind of jumped out to me, and a couple people echoed it as well, is like, fuel mileage has always been a part of these races to some degree, sometimes more, sometimes less, but it's always been there. And some of these races and super speedways have been decided by fuel mileage. We're getting it more now than ever. But we saw so many times in the heyday of NASCAR where they would run single file for a good portion of the race, and they were just logging laps and saving fuel. And a couple fans today said, I did not like that. I would much rather see them run 3 or 4 wide as they have done here. That to me is exciting than sit there and watch them run single file. That does nothing for me.
I'm going to throw something out, Jordan, because you always criticize me when I don't have solutions.
I like it. Here we go.
Here's an idea. You tell me why this won't work aside from the teams would say it would cost too much money. I think a 500-mile race at Talladega or any of these places. I mean, you're not going to change Daytona 500, but the other 500-mile races at these super speedways, it's kind of pointless because it's
Sure.
90% of it's fuel savings, and then they finally get to race, or maybe more, right? What if you did twin 150-mile races, half points for each? Now the teams would say, okay, well, I don't want to wreck 2 cars in one day. I don't want to lose 2 cars. Hey, I mean, when they used to actually have practice and they draft in the practice
all the time, they draft
cars in a weekend.
Yeah.
So, now would they love that? No, but the fans, you get, it's just like the duels, right? Like, except it's a full field for each. You pay half points. And at least, and then with those races, you are the whole time you're going strong, right? Like, or most of it, right? Like you're getting more urgency. And maybe you even do a reverse grid, flip the field for the second race. In the comments, a lot of people are saying, no, you're an idiot. This is awful. Just fix the racing. But I don't think you're going to fix the racing. So this is my idea. What do you think?
I don't hate it. I really don't. And I don't hate it at all, because even when the super speedways were these, big moves could be made, right? Again, you had moments of the race that were we often heard drivers just like, I just need to get to the end. I'm just logging laps here. They would drop to the back, and you wouldn't have a lot of action per se. And I will even take it further. I think you could consider this for a lot of things. I think a lot of races are too long. And if we're, there's a lot of races that could be shortened, and you're not going to do that for TV purposes, but I don't think this is a bad idea. Now, Talladega has a playoff race, and so I don't know how that would work with the playoffs and everything. And, if you have 2 winners of the Talladega playoff race and they both advance, there's some complications there, but I don't necessarily hate it. I think it's an idea. I think it's not of, oh my God, you're a moron, I can't believe you're saying this. It's something to talk about. It could be entertaining. Why not? Why can't you have this? And I will say this though as well. How do you do this with the regular season finale at Daytona, which we both love and we both think that is a great race in that spot? How do you handle that?
Couldn't.
Yeah.
And playoff berths in general. So how would you do it with advancing to the playoffs? And I get that.
But, and again, there's a lot of complications here. I don't hate it, because in general, I'm a fan of shortening races. I think there's something to be said for that, though. That's not going to happen for TV reasons. But I don't think you're a moron for thinking that. I really don't.
I mean, you could say the winning driver of one of the 2 races who had the best finish overall wins or something. But, I get the comments are just saying, just please fix it, fix the racing. You don't need to worry about this. But again, folks, have you seen this car? This car is not going anywhere. We just have talked about this. Martinsville, Bristol is another super speedway. I don't want to be, I feel like when we have a string of races that aren't what people hoped, and then I got to come on here and be negative, and the people go, wow, Jeff Gluck hates NASCAR or something. I want NASCAR to be good. I remember the glory times, the glory days of it. I know I don't have a great memory, but I have a long enough memory to remember when the racing was awesome and at these certain tracks. That's just what I'm looking for. I think a lot of people are the same way. I'm sorry if it's not what people want to hear, but anyway.
I get that. But I also think sometimes you look at things through rose-colored glasses. While the racing may have been great at some tracks of that era you're talking about, it also wasn't great at other tracks, a lot of other tracks. And now the racing is great at those tracks, and maybe it's less so elsewhere. And goes back to the same conversation we had at Bristol. I don't know how you, in a schedule that is continually adding different style tracks, I don't know how you're going to have a car that is going to continually put on a good to great show every single week. I just don't think you're going to be able to do it 38 times a year. That's a really, really high bar. You're going to have clunkers. And I understand. I get frustrated when I hear people, oh, then back in the day, this and that, this racing was this. It's like, y'all are looking at this through rose-colored glasses. Not necessarily you, but like some people, it's like there was a lot of issues with the racing back then. There wasn't as good as you thought it was. And I don't know what you do. Like, you're not every single race is going to be an amazing race, and it is what it is. And I didn't think this was the greatest Talladega race ever. I sure as heck didn't think it was the worst. I mean, the 2015 spring race here was not good. I don't even, that was the one that Earnhardt won, and nobody even, like, they ran single file for pretty much to the end, and nobody can make a move.
2018 fall was really bad.
Exactly. Like, so like this isn't like unprecedented. Is what, this is not like, this is all of a sudden we got a huge problem. Yes, this has to do with the car to some degree, but again, those are
I will disagree with you in the sense that we're seeing this as a pattern now, Jordan. We're seeing this every at least big super speedway. Atlanta is a little bit different, but this is what we're seeing at Daytona and Talladega consistently with the fuel saving stuff, with the locked in line, can't pass. So that's where I don't think this is not an anomaly with this car. This is what this car is producing. So that's how I feel about it. But
let me throw in, listen, I'm Mr. Tire wear guy, and I understand that, but I was talking to some people after the race, and like, there is no tire wear in this car. Like I don't think you have to be careful. You have to be very, very careful, because
you don't want to be blowing tires in the pack of the super speedway.
Like, you have to be careful. But do you want to be going where you can go 2 pit stop cycles and not have to change tires?
The focus needs to be on the aero package or whatever they do, not the tires.
That's fair.
I don't think you ever want to get in a situation where somebody's worn their tires out and it caused them to.
But the thing about Daytona back in the day was there was tire wear. That was what made
that, and that separated the field a little bit.
Yeah, and that made and again, and you're 100% right. You have to be. It is a very thin line, because you cannot have blowouts, because you have to be careful of hurting somebody and that kind of thing. But I think we have to acknowledge, going 2 pit stop cycles without having to change tires, that's like, and again, I don't know how you do that, and I don't even know if you can, but it's like, that needs to be noted.
Let's talk about how this race was won. So here's my perspective, and I'd like to hear your thoughts, and because obviously you're there and you talked to the drivers afterwards, so shed some light on what they said. Here's my perspective. So in the final laps, you had Cindric leading the low line with Larson behind him, and then you had Byron leading the high line with Bowman behind him. With 7 laps to go on the backstretch, it looked like up to that point, Cindric was going to be in trouble, because Larson was not going to push Cindric. If it came down to it with 2 teammates on the outside, as much as Larson would like to win the race for himself, he's not going to push a Ford past his own teammates on the outside, had they been able to retain that position. So Larson would back off. Cindric would be a sitting duck. I don't know how you overcome that if everybody's locked in line. But a key moment happens, because Bowman had been pushing Byron. I went back and looked at both Byron and Bowman's in-car camera to understand what exactly happened. It looked like it's the smallest of little things. Bowman gave Byron a shove, and it looked like Byron just got a little bit squirrely for a second, and they kind of just lost connection on the backstretch for, a few seconds. That moment allows the bottom 3 cars, which were Cindric, Larson, and Preece, to go by. Then Preece takes I wonder what would have happened if Larson, if that wasn't his teammates. Does Larson get called to move up? He didn't want to move up and block his teammates, maybe. I don't know. But Preece takes that opportunity. He's clear. He moves up, and it's not even a close block. He moves up and he takes that top lane. Then when the run comes back to Preece, Preece gets moved up, and so then it's Cindric and Preece to decide the race in the final laps. Obviously, then there's one Hendrick car behind each of them. There's no favoritism at that point. I think nobody's going to be able to make a third lane, because they've all seen what happens. If you pull out, you go to the back. So nobody's going to do that. Larson's best bet, as was Byron, is to see if those guys get racing and they can, kind of get a gap, or they push one out far enough to then make a gap for themselves, ditch them, right, and then pull for the win. But they weren't able to do that. Larson pushed as hard as he could. I watched his in-car at the end coming through the tri-oval. I went back to Byron again. Didn't seem Byron really push. I think that was the difference. I know TV talked about the draft from the two cars ahead of him, the two lap cars. I think Larson locked on to Cindric and pushed the crap out of him, where Byron didn't push Priest as much, and that was the game. That was game over.
It's a really great observation by you, and I asked kind of Kyle Larson, what could he have done? He's like, listen, my in that situation, I was trying to push. The only thing I really could have done was maybe push Cindric clear of the 60, and then Cindric probably is then going to slide up either to block any outside run or maybe to pick up a 4 teammate, and then Larson would have moved up into the front row, and then from there you've got an fighting chance. That he said that was his only opportunity, was to keep on Cindric, keep pushing Cindric, not back off, and get Cindric clear of the 60, and then hope that Cindric then would slide up and do that. Other than that, Larson said he had no opportunity to do anything, just because, again, everything we talked about. So you're right on there.
Cindric gets his redemption because he could have won the Daytona 500. He could have won Atlanta. He led the most laps in Daytona 500, and then he gets into an incident with Larson at Atlanta. He asks for Larson's number, says, "Hey, call me because we gotta talk this out afterwards." And so maybe that's a little bit of, I don't know if that was in Larson's mind necessarily. I don't know if anybody asked him about that, but certainly it didn't hurt that Larson probably thought he owed Cindric one to help him a little bit in that situation. Was that a topic at all? I don't know.
Not when I was around him. No, not that I heard.
Listen, Cindric, I mean, he was a trendy pick for this race, and with
he's
good
good
reason.
In these races.
Yeah,
he was good here last fall. Like, Penske in general is great in these races. That a Penske driver won today is obvious. I mean, we wrote about it this week on The Athletic. Of like, they are so good in these races. What they haven't done, and what they continually haven't done, is close out. They lead a ton of laps, but they do not close out. They inevitably, something happens, usually of their own doing, and it ends up costing them. It happened at Daytona, happened at Atlanta. It didn't happen today, and that put Austin Cindric in victory lane. But this is what they do regularly here, and Austin Cindric winning is not at all surprising.
Yeah, and people might look at this and say, "Wow, he was 22nd in points coming into today. Maybe this is the first sort of a wild card winner of the year." I would disagree, because if he would have had his 50-point penalty back from Coda, he would be 11th in points right now, and just a few points out of like 9th or 8th. He'd be right there with his teammates, essentially.
What the best thing to do is take a look at where they're at in the owner's points, because they did not lose owner's points for Coda. They only lost driver's points. So that is actually and I don't have it in front of me, and sorry, failed on that measure, but that is an indicative of where they actually would be representative, where they'd actually be in the standings.
Yeah. So he is 11th there as well.
Yeah.
Right? So
and that's impressive.
Yeah. Now here's the thing, Jordan, and I hate to be the party pooper on this. I know you're going to say it's.
Do you really? No, you really?
Do you want to predict what I'm going to bitch about?
I couldn't even. There are so many directions you could go in. Jeffrey Wet Blanket.
So my point after the Coda penalty was that giving Cindric 50 points and $50,000 could be completely irrelevant. NASCAR came out with this new policy at the beginning of the year that said, if we suspend you, you lose all your playoff points for the entire season, present and future, until the playoffs, right? They docked Cindric 50 points, $50,000. And at the time, a lot of respected people in the industry made the argument that, well, that's actually bigger, a more severe penalty than, if he had been suspended. I mean, that's a ton of points, all that stuff, which I would agree with if you think that person's not going to win a race. Austin Cindric has now won a race. That 50 points is completely irrelevant. So aside from the money, the $50,000, Austin Cindric is not only in the playoffs, so the 50 points doesn't matter. He now has his playoff points back, which he would not have had. Mm-hmm. He has 6 playoff points right now. That is tied for 5th in the series. So Austin Cindric, by NASCAR not suspending him, he goes from, he would have been last to start the playoffs. He's going to be somewhat of a seed. I don't know. Now you could argue, well, maybe if he gets in the top 10 in regular season points, he would have got 1 or 2 points for the playoffs. Fine. But that penalty has been rendered irrelevant. Similarly, you were just at Rockingham, and we could talk about that a little bit later, your Rockingham experience, but Jesse Love wins that race, gets DQ'd. Sammy Smith wins the race. Sammy Smith had a 50-point penalty for his on-track action, right? Mm-hmm. Not suspended. Sammy Smith now in the playoffs, that penalty is completely rendered useless. So NASCAR is trying to take a stand here and say, we have a new rule and we're, suspension. It better not get suspended because we're going to take your playoff points away, blah, blah, blah. They don't use the suspension thing. They do 50 points instead. Now, both those people almost immediately win their way into the playoffs. Useless. Am I wrong?
I mean, you're not, because this system is, as long as you get in the playoffs, ultimately that's the goal, right? And you're not wrong. I mean, it doesn't matter if you get points docked or this or that or whatever, as long as you can still qualify for the playoffs and still get what you earn going in. And in Cindric's case, and I guess Sammy Smith as well, it's not a deterrent in some respects of that said, if you continue to NASCAR is going to continue to ramp this up, and you would think at some point they're going to have to start suspending people to send a message. It's an interesting concept, because the butterfly effect from this is ultimately it didn't matter. The 50 points hurts, and it could cost him some playoff points down the road if he gets in the top 10 and he's ran well enough to get there, but it's not a big deal. And the money, honestly, is you just shrug your shoulders at that.
Yeah. So I don't love that because I felt like you could see this coming. If somebody's going to make the playoffs, he was probably going to do it with a win, not on points, although he was running well. But
is there a common ground there? It's not an all or none. We're not going to strip all of your playoff points from all of them. But we're not going to let you carry them with you. Is there some kind of middle ground where it doesn't have to be, to that each level?
I mean, if you do that, why would you make a brand new rule to they just made this rule.
Hey, I mean, it's not like
it would be
the first time NASCAR's made a rule, then changed it.
I know, but they just made the rule to make suspensions matter more.
So you're saying we need to start seeing more suspensions then. That's basically, and are you okay with seeing more suspensions?
If you're going to have the rule, I mean, they were already suspending people for incidents. So I don't know. This seems like
but I mean, I go back to the Cindric thing, and it's not a black or white though. What happened at Coda in that situation, it is not nearly as egregious as if it had happened on a high-speed oval.
He said the next week at Phoenix, he said, yeah, I made an error in judgment. I lost my cool, and I knew right away that I did something wrong. I mean,
yeah, but just because you did something wrong, you made error in judgment, it isn't the same level of error in judgment that I made when I right hook somebody on a high-speed mile-and-a-half racetrack head onto the wall. Coming out of a corner on a road course, to me, it's not apples to apples. It is not. And that's where I get a little not all speeding tickets are the same. There's varying degrees. If you're going 5 over, it's one penalty. If you're going 15 over, it's another. If you're going 100 over, you're going to jail and the cuffs are coming on, and not in a good way.
Well, earlier in the race, because, obviously there was no big one, the 2 incidents, let's talk about those. Coming to the green flag pit stops, the first green flag pit stops of the day. Kozlowski, Busch, Blaney get taken out. what was your view of this incident? Because I didn't hear, I don't know if anybody talked to Kyle Busch afterwards, but it looked to me like the cars ahead of him, like Cole Custer at Zane Smith, somebody else, checked up a lot more than Keselowski thought he was going to. And then he's kind of got out of line right a little bit, and Busch was trying to come to pit road as well. I went back and listened to his radio, and they're saying, hey, come in this time, all that stuff. So, and then he just got cleaned out. And then obviously Blaney tried to avoid it and got in it as well. So I didn't hear, I'd like to hear other opinions, whether that was like, did those guys check up too much? Were they doing a proper pit road procedure coming? Like, you know what I'm saying? What was it?
No, I mean, I heard there was some, and there were some people saying that there was not, like, some people weren't waving necessarily, and there wasn't the level of communication that maybe needed to be. When I went back and looked at it, it certainly seemed like the guys ahead of Brad slowed down to a higher level than he thought. That said, it's still on the responsibility of the six to, at least account for that, of saying, hey, this may happen here, and then not make a panic move, for lack of a better term, and come in there and like slam on the brakes and try to swerve. And it's like, you have to be of the mindset of like, there may be somebody on there outside of here pitting. Like, you just can't hope and pray. Like, I'm going to go right here and hope there's no one there. To me, if I'm going to put a blame on somebody, I would think Brad would probably get the most of it. It just looked like a panic move of, oh, these guys in front of me are stopping way too quick. I need to slam on the brakes and swerve. And it was unnecessary. And I will say this, it's the first pit stop of the day. Like, it's okay to be cautious. And I know track position is everything in these races and et cetera, but you got to make sure you get through this and put yourself in a position to get there to the end. And to me, that's not looking at the bigger picture, saying we got to be smart here. And that is where the accountability, to me, falls on Brad. Yeah.
I mean, Brad Keselowski in his interview that I saw said, I don't think there's anything I could have done differently. So it'll be interesting to hear some other takes this week on the other NASCAR podcasts. Immediately afterwards on the restart, I happened to flip over to Denny Hamlin's in-car, because what I enjoy at some of these super speedways or anywhere else is like watching the guy right behind the leader. If you're watching the leaders in-car, you're kind of hearing the chatter for, if the leader has a tire going down or something big, but you can't really see anything. You're just looking at clean track, right? Whereas at least if you're the guy that's second or third in line, you can kind of get a better sense of the race. So I'd flipped over to Hamlin, and I just happened to be watching it. And all of a sudden you just see Bell go whoop. And it's like, oh, did that just happen? And then, my screen lights up caution. And I was like, oh yeah, he just, I think he just turned Bell there. And then he gets on the radio and, he says this whole thing about apologies if that was on me. Bell, sounds like talking to you guys at the care center, said, hey, you got to push and be pushed. And that's how it goes. Kevin Harvick on the broadcast says that the Toyota nose is a little bit pointier. He says because of that. But Scott Graves, Chris Buescher's crew chief, Chris Buescher got taken out, and that says on X, this team works so hard every week. We had our driver in position for the end of stage one, and the guys who would consider themselves some of the best drivers in the world can't even get through a restart. I see why you have insurance sponsor, Denny Hamlin. Can we file a claim? So what's the deal here? I mean, can you assign blame in a situation like that? Is it just one of those weird pushes? Because it's very difficult for me as a non-driver when you see these incidental little pushes and all of a sudden a car goes. I mean, I guess it's his fault. I guess he screwed up. But it's also like, where was the moment where it didn't seem egregious,
No, I mean, fundamentally, I guess it would be Hamlin's fault because he was the pusher. But again, It's just part of super speedway racing. And so it's like, I have a really hard time blaming Denny on this one. This to me is it's a racing accident. This is it wasn't an egregious push by any means. It wasn't like he was being super aggressive or anything like that. This was just caught him at the wrong time, at the wrong place, and Bell got wiggly. And, if Buescher wasn't there, maybe this doesn't happen the way it is. It sucks. It just does. I to sit there and blame Denny, though, I wouldn't do that.
Well, to be fair, if that was Hocevar, the whole industry would be up in arms and want him to be.
But reputation is the reputation. And Denny, when it comes to these races, we just talked about Brad Keselowski. Brad is known as somebody who is super aggressive when it comes to pushing and is known as somebody who starts some of these accidents. Denny Hamlin is not that. That is not who Denny Hamlin is. And so at that point, Denny Hamlin deserves the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's like, wow, you shouldn't have pushed in the corner or something. I feel like it's not like the only person that pushed all day in the corner. Like aren't they all? I mean, it seems like, I don't know. It's too tough for me to make a definitive, and I'm sure some people will say, oh, you're not going to slam Denny because he's on Dirty Mo and you're on Dirty Mo. No, but I just, I don't, it's tough for me to, I can't make that judgment. I'm sorry.
So I mean to backtrack really quick here. We were talking about this and completely spaced. As we're talking about pushing, it made me think about bumpers. And I was talking to somebody in the garage, a crew chief, and they were talking about solutions to this racing, right? And they mentioned the front and rear bumpers are so rigid and there's like no give to them. And they compared it to the Xfinity series, where in the Xfinity series, they're beating and pushing all day, that kind of thing. Their front and rear bumpers kind of wear. And so over the course of a race, it kind of it changes the racing a little bit and what you can do and that kind of thing. And, one idea was maybe if you could figure out a way to make these bumpers have a little bit more wear, that might be able to help the quality of racing.
All right. Well, I'm sure that'll cost money, so people won't want to do that. But Bubba Wallace won stage 2, but the big highlight there was Joey Logano with a terrific rant. I mean, just
all-timer.
Terrific
all-timer.
Chef's kiss rant.
How many times did you go back and listen to it?
Well, I wanted to make sure that I wanted to make sure that I got it exactly right, because when you're putting somebody's swear words out into the world, you really got to make sure you get everything correct there, right? You can't just be like, "Oh, I missed that," or I tweeted this and he didn't really say that. So I transcribe it fairly accurately. I believe it was, "Way to go, Austin. Way to go, you dumb F. Way to effing go. What a stupid S." And I'm just bleeping this for the kids who listen to this. "You just gave it to him. Gave Toyota a stage win. Nice job. Way to go. What a dumb." Put that in the book again. And then he says something like, "Tell him to text his notes to us," or something. So it must be some inside Penske reference. But then Austin, I went back and listened to his. He's like, and he goes, what he was mad about is Joey. He didn't push Bubba to the win. He got out of line behind Joey and he didn't push Joey. So and then they got split 3 wide. But Austin, he goes on in there. He's like, "Hey, that was all I could do not to wreck Joey." He says, "I was obviously trying to stay there, but I was trying not to wreck everybody." Good call, because he ended up saving his car to win the race. So I think once cooler heads prevail, I would suspect that maybe once Joey gets that explanation, he would probably be more chill about that, because Cindric wasn't like, "I'm going to bail on you here," like Logano probably thought. It was, "I'm just trying to not like turn you into the wall and wreck the whole field," which, again, good decision. So I think I'm team Cindric on that one.
I asked Joey Logano about this post race, and he's like, "Austin made a bad decision." And we didn't go back and forth on it, but he's like, Austin made a bad decision, and Joey did not want to go further into it. I would be curious to see, like you go back, look at the tape and the set of circumstances, sequence events. You might have a different view, but this is the weird thing about super speedway racing. Kyle Larson is pushing a Ford driver today to the win. Like, this is just part of it. And wasn't too long ago in the playoffs where I think it was Kyle Larson, if I'm not mistaken, was told not to push a certain driver to a win because they were a different manufacturer. So it's this whole game of how this all works, where you've got these different camps, but sometimes you get guys like Carson Kosovar who pretends he's a Toyota and is pitting with the Toyotas and ends up leading the Toyotas on pit road in that sequence there, which is just absolutely wild. So it's just strange bedfellows, and this is the uniqueness of super speedway racing.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I mean, in the Larson situation, had there been a Chevy on the other side, he's not going to push. But when there's 2 Fords and a Ford's going to win either way, you might as well push and get the best finish for yourself, which was third in that case for him.
But it's also a regular season race, so maybe he would have pushed it, because there was playoff implications and everything else, and I don't know. It's hard to say.
You can't. Yeah. I hear you.
I don't know.
I think we've got a lot of other topics non-Talladega to talk about.
We spent way more talking about Talladega than I actually thought we would. Like,
so
I'm really surprised.
Unless there's something else about Talladega, why don't we just do the good race poll now, and then we can move on to the other many topics.
Let's do it
if that's cool.
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, I won a couple weeks ago. The Bristol race. You were thinking it wasn't going to be that low. I went way low, and it was.
You're right.
20 whatever percent. It was pretty bad. So I'm up 6-4 now. Nice little three race winning streak according to Big Joe Wall. This is obviously a little bit tougher here because I have to tell you, in general, super speedway races don't rate very high for people. There's always a lot of angst, I guess, for some of the fan base about them in general. Of course, this one today will obviously not, people aren't going to vote at 90% or something. There was no big one, so some people want to see that. People are going to be upset about the fuel saving. People are going to be upset about not being able to pass and being locked in line. So, it's not going to be amazing, but it's just a matter of, where does it rank, right? So, are you ready to go here?
Yeah, I suppose.
All right, let's go. Oh, okay.
All right, go ahead.
I typed mine in the calculator.
Well,
I've got 47.8.
I'm going with my old trusty 30%.
Oh my gosh, that's so low. Holy cow. I thought it was going to be around 50-50. 30%. Whoa. That's really bad. So you think people are going to hate this?
I think people are frustrated. I think that drivers seem frustrated. Seems like fans are frustrated. I didn't hate today's race. I was not offended by it. I was fine, to use my old term, perfectly acceptable. But I think that the outrage among fans is to a point of like, they just did not get what they were expecting. And on top of what you're following a sequence of races at Darlington and Bristol. I think there's just this, like, it's bubbling. It really is bubbling.
Yeah, I think that might be too low because if I look here, that would be the lowest Talladega race out of 19 in the poll. Even that 2018 stinker that Almirola won, where Stuart Haas dominated and they ran single file a lot of the day, that was 42%. So that's going to be, I don't know. I mean, hey, you could be right because I think you're right about the momentum element of it. Like, people are kind of pissed right now. In general, they're not getting what they want to see. So, and I don't think there was a ton of redeeming racing that went on today. It was fuel saving, and then they got locked in line and they couldn't really go, and nothing. I guess you would say, from some people's view, nothing really happened. Quote, I'm putting in air quotes. So, I could see it, but I do think it's going to be closer to 50-50. But we'll see. We'll see. Jordan, there's so much to talk about.
I know. I don't even know where we start.
Well, let's go in chronological order here.
Let's do it.
Maybe. While we were away, you broke a story about Homestead being the championship race. Yep. Last I was hearing that, the county or whatever wasn't totally on board with giving them the money. And so they delayed whatever the announcement was going to be. But then now it is going to be the championship race. You're reporting at least for 1 year. Then there'll be a rotation. You wrote this for The Athletic. What happened? What changed? Are they giving them the money or what?
No, I mean, there is, as of now, no funding from the state, county. Our city has materialized. Not saying it won't. There's efforts still being underway to make that happen. But NASCAR, a lot of different factors contribute to this. One was the good racing that we did see at Homestead last month. There's some really good positive momentum down there in terms of people penetrating that really tough Florida sports market. There was really encouraging signs at the last race that they seemed like they're heading in that direction. And really, it kind of came down to this is what's best for the sport. Phoenix was never really intended to be a long-term, many years host of the championship. And to continue to have it at Phoenix is, it was time to move it. It just had run its course. And And Homestead had deserved this. And it was, even if the funding wasn't there, NASCAR needed to do what it could to make this happen, because this was for the better of the sport. This is what fans want. This is what the industry wants. And it was just time. And I think there's a couple things here to really, one, I think we do need to praise NASCAR for this, because I said in the podcast, like, if the money wasn't there, I don't know if this is going to happen. But this was NASCAR looking at this situation and saying, okay, we don't have the funding we thought we're going to do. We're still going to do this. We're going to be out of pocket. We're going to make this happen, and we're going to do what we can to make this successful. They deserve credit for that. They really, truly do. The other thing is, I think that, they're going to have a rotation. And the two tracks that we reported is going to be Phoenix and Vegas, at least at those three tracks. Maybe it could be more potentially down the road, but those are the three tracks I'm hearing initially. Phoenix deserves to have the championship. And I think from talking to people, it's probably much more palatable to have a championship at Phoenix once every 3-4 years than year after year after year. You know what I mean? And so it's much more easier to say, we're going to go there every 3-4 years to settle the championship than doing it every year. And so that'll probably help alleviate it as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds, but there's a lot of excitement. And I will say this, rarely in NASCAR do people ever agree on anything, whether it's in the garage, whether it's fans. You tell somebody the sky is blue, they're going to tell you it's red, right? I will tell you with almost 100% certainty, I have heard no complaints from anybody about this move. There is just widespread enthusiasm, and I think it's a great thing for NASCAR. You're going to a track that's going to put on a great racing, but this is really important. People have to support this. They have to buy tickets. They have to make this, they have to do this. It's much like we talk about, like, North Wilkesboro or Rockingham and all these other things. Like, you have to vote with you have to show your support through your pocketbook. And if the attendance isn't there, honestly, at the end of the day, it isn't going to matter much if the quality racing is high, because there are other tracks you can go to where you can have a good race and you're going to have more people turn out. Vegas, especially.
Well, it certainly makes my heart happy. I'm almost like pinching myself. Like, I can't believe it. Cause like you, I thought, well, once they're not going to get the money, as we said, well, can't they just do the right thing? And who cares about the money? And it sounds like they did. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty awesome. That seems like a breath of fresh air. Definitely stoked about that. Love Homestead. Definitely have a soft spot for the place. So we'll be very stoked for that. But of course, Jordan, nothing in NASCAR ever happens just smoothly without the most NASCAR thing possible happening. So what this really means is that Phoenix now this fall will probably be this epic championship race on the softer tire. And everybody will be like, why did they move it? Why did they move it to Homestead? Oh my gosh. No, now they figured it out, and it will already be moved. And so that's, but again,
I will say this, two things here. One, Phoenix is still going to have 2 race dates, and one of those dates is certainly going to be in the playoffs. Because if you look at the schedule, you sure as heck aren't going to have it during the summer. And you kind of,
I'm sure it'll be late in the year.
Yeah, it's going to be late. So it's going to still have an important spot in the playoffs. And it goes back to what I said, my second point, what I said earlier. If that does happen in the fall, that's a great thing, because then when that championship comes back to Phoenix, whenever that is, there's going to be a little bit more excitement and buzz about it. And it's like, okay, we're looking forward to this instead of this doom and gloom. So that's a good thing. Then I think that's why this rotation is a really good thing for NASCAR. And it's great that they're going in this direction.
Yes. And I love the rotation concept too, instead of going in the same place year after year, even if it's Homestead. I mean, to mix it up is terrific. Just, gives us something else to talk about. If one team hits on something there, it doesn't mean, it's going to be there forever. And I just think there's a lot of positives. So glad that you reported that. Real briefly, we touched on it, but what was your Rockingham experience like? I didn't get to watch the race. I was on vacation. Obviously that's the first race that I ever went to. 2004, the last Rockingham Cup Series race there. But sounds like it was a good crowd. People were happy. What was it like there?
I never been to Rockingham before, and I thought it was important to go. We talk a lot about Rockingham and everything, and I thought it was important to go see it in person and check it out. Great experience. The crowd showed up. I mean, the Truck Series race had a great crowd at 5:00 on a Friday of a holiday weekend. That place wasn't packed, but it was a darn good crowd for the Truck Series. And then Saturday for the Xfinity Series was awesome. It was electric. It felt like a big deal. It was really cool that the Xfinity Series had a showcase. And they put on a good show. They really did. And of course, inevitably the question is, okay, like we want Cup. Okay. That place needs work. Like they did a great job of putting it to where they got it to have an Xfinity Series race. It still needs work. They still have a ways to go to make that happen. And it goes back to the point I made about Homestead. They had a great crowd. That's awesome. But the telltale sign about Rockingham's future and whether it has a future in NASCAR, let alone having a Cup Series race, is going to come in 2026. And if people show up for the Xfinity Series race, because if they have when they have and they will, like there's no reason not to go back there. When they have a race next year and people don't show up, and it's not, and it doesn't have to be a sellout, but if it's 50%, that tells you everything. And that, what are we doing here? Like people aren't showing up to support this. That's a big thing. And the other thing, if you're looking at a Cup date, it can't be said enough. It's the oversaturation of this market. And like it is a real thing of that Charlotte area. There are 5 tracks that have a combined 8 dates that are 2 hours or less than Charlotte. That's a lot. And that's not even factoring in Richmond, Bristol, and Atlanta, which aren't that far, either. That's a lot of races in a small area. I don't know if that's a good idea or not. I think what Rockingham did was awesome. They did a great job. Let's continue to do that, build off of this. And if you continue to do that, you'll get your Cup date eventually.
Jordan, breaking news here on the podcast.
Oh boy.
We have breaking news from inspection.
Oh boy.
The winner does not change.
Okay.
But second place, Ryan Preece, has been disqualified, as 5th place Joey Logano has been disqualified.
Whoa.
Joey Logano, I'm reading here, is missing a spoiler bolt. Ryan Preece has, according to Bob Pockris' tweet here, 3 shims instead of 2 on his spoiler. So I guess good thing for NASCAR that Larson pushed the hell out of Cindric, because we would have had a disqualified winner.
Can you imagine, like Ryan Preece? He was like, afterwards, he's like, I'm pissed happy. Like, I'm pissed I didn't win, but I'm happy I finished second. It would have been a feel-good story. This journeyman driver who a lot of people kind of wrote off, like, what are you doing? Blah, etc. Gets the win. It would have been an emotional victory lane. And then having that taken away. Oh.
Well, this is really damaging for him because he had moved up
Yeah.
to 12th in points.
Yeah.
Obviously having a great season. So that's going to hurt. Obviously, I guess he will be second to last place, while Logano would be last place because Logano finished lower. I would think that's how that works. So Logano, wasn't that Logano's first top 5 of the year?
Yeah, correct.
Well, there goes that.
There goes that. Does he blame Austin Cindric for this?
Man, Logano is not going to be a happy guy.
No, he is not. Man,
good thing his teammate ends up passing for him. I mean, that would have been, that had been a multiple Penske kind of thing. But yikes! Yikes! Wow.
It's been that kind of year for Logano, which has been a lot of speed, a lot of great runs, a lot of laps led, a lot of putting yourself in position to get wins and really good finishes. And at the end of the day, no top 5s, no wins, no top 5s. And you're still, you're in the spot where you're still fighting for playoff livelihood.
Wow. I'm very curious about the 3 shims where the rule says it's supposed to be 2. Is that just like a total mistake, or
that is beyond my pick? I try to not get down the technical rule stuff because that is not my expertise.
Yeah. Wow.
I can't change a tire, let alone talk about shim. So,
speaking of crew chiefs who have gotten creative in the past, Rodney Childers,
nice transition.
Are, surprisingly, shockingly, perhaps, out at Spire.
Yeah.
Talked to Jeff Dickerson this week. Talked to Rodney Childers also for a while, and I guess what I could tell you is, and people have said this, it just wasn't a good fit.
Yep.
Dickerson talked about how in this business, when you when you have an arrangement, you don't get to date before you get married, and you sign up for something thinking it's going to be one way. It sounded like that was the same for both parties, where Spire thought that it was going to be a certain way. Rodney thought it was going to be a certain way. He'd be doing certain things, whatever. And it just didn't work out that way. And neither was really getting out of the relationship what they wanted. So you have a situation where, Jeff Dickerson's like, okay, we're coming off the only off week. This has been apparent for a while. And, do we try to put a Band-Aid on this here? We're only 9 races into it, but it doesn't seem like things are going well. And, the feel, the communication, the vibe of the team is off. It's, he said it wasn't performance, results necessarily, but it was the feel of the team wasn't what it should be. And so it was like, okay, once you come to the conclusion that it's not going to work, why prolong it? Why go the whole season doing this? And so they just felt like it was better to just make the move now. And it sounds like, Rodney agreed with that. So, I think while it was a surprise about the timing, that it wasn't a surprise that, it just didn't feel like things were going the way they should. So, Dickerson's like, I know what this looks like. We're a young team and we're parting ways with the championship guy here, and it probably doesn't look good for us. But at the same time, it's like, this is our ethos, where if we feel like, hey, it's not working, there's something wrong here, we're going to make the move. Why just keep going? So pretty surprising though, obviously, still not knowing all the ins and outs of what was coming.
Yeah, I mean, the best way it was described to me was this was trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, and it just wasn't going to fit. It wasn't fitting, and it was a recognition of this, we're going to end up splitting at some point. It's in everybody's best interest to just do it now and try to salvage our season the best we can, and then allow Rodney to do what, go forward and do what's next. And sometimes these don't work out. This is a high profile move. This is not unprecedented. There have been a lot of high profile crew chiefs have gone places and have found out that it just didn't work. And they leave quickly. And it's just, this is the way the sport works sometimes. You get hired to be fired sometimes. And that, in this case, feels like it was just a situation. It wasn't working for everybody. What are we doing here? Let's everybody, part ways and go in different directions and hopefully find happiness elsewhere.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what Rodney does next, because obviously there's still a place for him somewhere, I'm sure. And so what does he want to do? What kind of situation does he want to be in? Dickerson said, to him, having sort of a quiet crew chief and a quiet driver led to some, lack of communication at times. In his mind, now they'll have Ryan Sparks there, who, Ryan Sparks is not a quiet guy, right? Like he's gonna talk yeah. Go ahead.
And that's the thing too. And I've heard is like Justin is a driver who just gets down on himself a lot. Like he's somebody who beats himself up a little bit. And he needs somebody who is going to continually kind of like lift him up and elevate him. And that's it's not a criticism, Rodney. Rodney's just a quiet guy. Like that's who he is. And he's kind of a lead by example guy. And he had a driver previously in Kevin Harvick who didn't need to be built up. Like Kevin Harvick would make a mistake, and Kevin Harvick wasn't beating himself on the radio. Kevin Harvick is like, F this, I'll fix this, myself. Like I got this. I don't need you to be my cheerleader. And it worked. But Justin is a young driver who's still trying to prove himself, who really gets down on himself, and you need to cheerlead. And Ryan Sparks is good in that role. It also will help that Ryan and Justin have some familiarity with each other. They worked the latter part of last season together. So it's as these things go, that the transition is relatively seamless. It's, as it can be. So that does help.
Yeah. Well, certainly not something you saw coming. So another thing that was announced recently, this last week, the All-Star race. There's going to be, I know you think I'm going to go on a rant about this, so
I'm looking forward to this. I had this in my notes of things you were going to, I had the possible Jeff rant topics, and this was on my list.
So there's going to be a promoter's caution between lap 100 and lap 220, I guess. The promoter in this case, obviously, is Marcus Smith. And it sounds like it's literally going to be, I was told by NASCAR, Marcus Smith and Speedway Motorsports.
Yeah.
However you want to define that, deciding the caution. So I guess they'll be in the tower. I don't know if they'll hit the actual button. Marcus is going to be watching the race, and he's going to be like,
"Does he mean the flag
this
stand?
Is boring." Or
that's what they should put him.
I don't know how they're going to do it, but he's going to be the person deciding it. And so I don't know if it's like, hey, if you're a driver and you're leading, you better not get out to too far of a lead because Marcus is going to take it away. Or, there's a chance he doesn't have to throw it. So
there's a chance, but the likelihood is,
yeah, that's not a very showman thing to do, to not throw it. But
no,
how do you play it if you're a driver or a team, or
you plan on a two things is what I heard is one, okay. you treat this like you're going to have a standard competition. This is a standard competition caution, at some point. And the thing of it is if you're in Marcus's shoes, you're going to put that in your back pocket. That there's a break at lap 100, right? I think that's what it is. Mm-hmm. So you're probably not going to throw it before lap 100. And so
I don't think you can. I think he has to throw it between lap 100 and lap 220.
Was it? Okay. The All-Star rules. I would say that you're probably going to wait until the latter part of that to see that happen, because then it theoretically would set up a better finish. So if I'm a crew chief, in my back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, we're probably going to have that competition caution towards the end, and I need to account for that. And I'm not really even thinking about it before lap 150.
Yeah, I just, to me, it's kind of stupid, but at the same time, like, it's the All-Star race. It doesn't really mean anything. It is like a competition caution anyway. And let's not forget, short track races suck with this car. So, it is.
Really?
They do. So, you have, I didn't know, new pavement, whatever. It's probably not going to be a great race. So, okay, there's going to be a sort of random caution that could be an otherwise boring race. I don't like that. Here's what I don't like about it is that no matter, and Marcus better be ready, I guess, for the blowback from whatever fan base is going to be. People are going to accuse him of manipulating or playing favorites because they're going to say, this helped my driver, or look at this caution, hurt my driver, whatever. So
it ain't going to matter. It doesn't matter who's in front. It's a matter of how much they're in front by. That's what matters.
Yeah, sure. But you try explaining that to somebody who's leading.
I'm not even going to worry about that because people, again, no one's ever going to agree on this. So like, even trying to having rationale, it's like trying to argue with you. Like, it's just sometimes you just step back, like, you know what, I'm done because you're not going to accept this. Don't roll your eyes. I'm right.
That should be your mentality a lot because you're so wrong. So you should just say, Jeff's right. Oh man, wow, what a great point.
Yeah, I'm not living my life, but going off what you say, that sure is not happening.
Obviously. But I just think, look again, like, what would I have really liked? The run what you brung race.
Yeah.
That the teams rejected. That would have been cool. Everybody would have been excited about that. We heard that Bozy Tatarevich reported on his podcast that the teams were offered to do a run what you brung race where there would just be a safety inspection, and then they would let them do whatever setups or whatever.
Not they whatever. On the car. Like, it's not necessarily whatever. Like, there was good part of parameters in there. And let me go ahead. You please go ahead. I interrupted you, so then I'll tell you what I know.
Well, we heard that the teams rejected this. I checked with NASCAR. I said, "Is this true?" What Bozy reported, they said, "Yes, that is true." But we don't get into the discussions with the team. So I don't really know anything about it. You were there this weekend. I'm sure you talked to people. What can you tell us about why this isn't happening?
So from the team's perspective, and what I gathered was it was largely almost universally in the garage. Every team had their own objections to this. And some of the objections were centered around, you couldn't do anything to the engine. You couldn't do anything to the tire. You were actually limited. There were some things fundamentally to the chassis and parts and pieces and stuff you couldn't do. So like, you were still kind of it really wasn't a true, run what you brung race. Like you were still confined to a certain area on things. And the other thing I heard a lot was about costs is inevitably, because the teams can't help themselves. And I heard this from big teams. I heard this from small teams. Is the big teams were like, listen, you know what we're going to do. We've got the resources and the people, and we're going to devote a ton of time and energy to this. And we're going to go all out and to try to, win this thing. And like, we're going to spend a lot of money. And they said the $1 million prize is not worth it. It's just not worth it because we're going to overspend and overcommit time, energy, and money to this. And the return isn't worth it. Some of those smaller teams I spoke to said, we're at a disadvantage because the bigger teams have all of that time and they have all those resources. They have people they can like dedicate to this. We can't. What are we supposed to do? We also have budgets that are more confined. We can't really exceed that. We're operating in a much smaller window. And so they were frustrated. Like, what are we going to do here? So I will say there were some people I talked to. They liked the idea. Denny Hamlin said it the other day, and we'll say that Denny Hamlin's going to talk more about this on his podcast this week, Actions Detrimental. I'm curious what he has to say, but I did ask him about it the other day, and he did say, like, it's something to explore for the future, and that this shouldn't be something to do. But because of everything I mentioned, plus the fact that you're basically going to wreck your car or wreck a chassis because you can't do anything. Anything you do to it isn't able to apply to anything else down the road. So you're basically throwing this away. It's just from their perspective, it was not worth it. I think it's a great idea. I think it's worth exploring. I love it. I would like to see this in future races.
Man, teams, I think you are a bunch of assholes. Honestly, you are a bunch of assholes. Seriously, stop crying about the freaking money. Will you stop it? Will you listen to yourselves? All you do is complain about the car. They won't let us do anything with this car. Why won't they let us do anything with the car? It's a spec car. It's a Temu car. I got this car at Target. I have to do everything that they want us to do, and they won't let me do anything. Oh, and then they say, oh, okay, you know what? Here's a race. We'll let you do whatever you want. Okay, hey, maybe this will actually help us fix the stupid car because we'll get some ideas. And we'll go, oh, wow, that's a good, hey, that's a cool thing. Well, what'd you do with that? How'd you get that car to race really well? That's cool. And they're like, no, oh my God, that would cost us a lot of money. We can't do that. Are you crazy? We can't spend the money on the all-star race. We're not getting paid enough for that. Why would we do that? You are assholes. Shut up. God, you piss me off. That's so stupid. Do you care about the sport? Now I got to bleep this. Sorry. I did not mean to do that. I'm sorry, kids. I'm sorry. I did not mean to do that. I meant to say
no,
freaking.
It's okay. We can be uncensored. That's great.
That really sucks. Stop talking about the freaking money. Will you stop it? You know how much money this is in this stupid sport? Why is everything about cost cutting? Oh my God. Stop it. You hear yourselves? Sorry.
No, don't ever apologize. This may be a prisoner of the moment. This might be P1 in the Jeff Gluck rant. Like, I don't know if there's ever one. I'm like shaking. I'm so mad right now hearing you say this. Oh, I mean,
I'm like my hands are like shaking. I'm like very upset about this. This is so stupid. God. Sorry. I'm sorry. I really apologize if any kids are watching this live, and I will bleep this from the podcast. But
this is fantastic. Listen, this is great. We need more of this. This is awesome. This is an all-timer. Congratulations. Bobby, 1 hour, 7 minute mark, please. You can just cut that. That's going to be the showcase highlight this week. Thank you. Phenomenal.
I didn't think that was going to, as you were speaking, I was just like
10 out of 10, no notes.
I didn't know that was the
phenomenal.
reason. So
here's the question for you. Let's go a little behind the curtains. Was this planned? Did you know what you were going to say? Did you have notes on this? It was just off the cuff.
You were speaking, I was like, that's why I didn't know what I thought maybe it had something to do with money, but like the reasons you're saying were just so crap.
Well, I mean, money's part of it. Money's part of it. And so,
God, come on, man. All right.
Cool.
Something that's not meant to raise anybody's blood pressure, I'm sure, was the race broadcast today, because I saw a lot of people being really upset about the commercials today. There was commercials late in the race, like from lap 12 to go to lap 5 to go. There was commercials all day. I mean, I watched this thing at home. Now, thank goodness I have the Max in-car cameras. I was barely paying attention, but it's like, I mean, I get it was Artie Kempner's last race as Fox director, so maybe he was like, what are they going to do? Get mad at me?
Peace
Bye.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like you finally get to the chance where they're racing all day. You're waiting for them to race. They finally race, and then you're like, great, this is a great time to go to commercial. Like, I mean,
I didn't see it, so I can't say. But if that's the case, that's not good.
It was all day, but like.
But I mean, that's the thing in network, being on a network too. Like, needs to be noted, this is the first network race in how many weeks, and this is when you're on a network. There are more commercials. Not defending them, just stating how this is.
I feel like lightheaded, Jordan. Like, I feel like my blood pressure just went up so much in the last 5 minutes that I'm gonna like
witness your head like literally exploding. That would be
as if my face isn't red enough already.
You look great. I mean, I can't say anything about being red. I've got the worst tan line ever. So.
All right. Well, I think we should just end this here because I feel like I embarrassed myself. But now every single team's going to be mad at me because this is great. And I'm
just apply to the teams that was
next
Jeff
two
Gluck.
races.
Well, I mean, you're such a NASCAR homer, Jeff. You know how this is. You just carry NASCAR's water week in and week out, and you're doing it again.
Oh, rough look. Texas and Kansas will be fun. All right, everybody. Well. Great episode back. We're back. 28 more to go in a row. So, any final thoughts? Did I miss anything?
Can you give me more rant, please? Is there a sequel? Like, what do I need for that? What do I got to do for this?
All right. Listen, my point again about the racing was beggars can't be choosers. Okay, I'm not saying I liked it. I'm just saying what's the alternative. Okay, beggars can't be choosers. Yeah, anyway,
All-Star race. You're okay with them, the team saying no?
It's great. Glad I won't be there. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time on the Teardown. See you, everybody. Damn it.